Delegates are Alice Walker is an internationally celebrated writer, poet, and activist whose books include 7 novels, 4 collections of short stories, 4 children's books, and volumes of essays and poetry. She won the Pulitzer Prize and the American Book Award for The Color Purple. She is the author of many best-selling novels, essays, and collections of poetry, including Meridian, By the Light of My Father's Smile, and The Third Life of Grange Copeland. She was awarded the Mahmoud Darwish Literary Prize for Fiction 2016. Urvashi Butalia is an Indian feminist writer, publisher, and activist. She is known for her work in the women's movement of India, as well as for authoring books such as The Other Side of Silence, Voices from and the Partition of India, and Speaking Peace, Women's Voices from Kashmir. Along with Ritu Menon, she co-founded Kali for Women, India's first feminist publishing house in 1984. In 2003, she founded Zuban Books, an imprint of Kali for Women. In 2011, Butalia and Menon were jointly awarded the Padma Shri, India's 4th highest civilian award for their work in literature and education. Anjum Katyal is a writer, editor, translator, and critic with years of experience in curating literary festivals, chief editor of Seagull Books in Calcutta from 1987 to 2006, and editor of Seagull Theatre Quarterly from 1994 to 2004. She steered 2 major translation projects, the New Indian Playwrights series of post-independence regional playwriting and the selected works of Mahashita Devi. She is currently the editor of Arthart, Multi-Arts Journal, and the director, Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival. We would please request everyone to put their hands for the delegates. Ms. Alice Walker will be joining us virtually. Before we start off the session, I would like to take a moment to thank all the partners of the festival. Thank you. I may hand over the session to them now.
Thank you very much. We're going to link in with the great and the good Alice Walker. So I'll wait for her to appear on the screen. Alice is currently in Jalisco, Mexico. I don't know whether Jalisco is the right way to pronounce it. That's the way it reads on paper. But she's 11 and a half hours behind us in time. So it's quite late at night for her there, and it's fairly early in the morning for us here. Welcome. Welcome, Alice. I was just telling them, can you hear us? I think you need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Yes.
Yes, what? You hear me now?
I hear you now. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
In many,
Great.
many
Hi.
meanings of that term, Alice, I hear you now. Welcome to a relatively warm morning in Calcutta. I was just telling the people gathered here to listen to us converse that you're sitting in Mexico and it's quite late at night for you there. And it's the next morning, bright and sort of sunny for us here. So welcome, and we're very, very happy to have you with us today. So very warm welcome. Can we have a huge round of applause for Alice, please?
I'm very happy to be with you.
Thank you. So this is very special for us here in Calcutta because it is the first time that you will be appearing in a public platform in this city. And I can't stress how much importance and love and respect this city would have for your writing and what you mean to the world of writing and literature and activism. So thank you very much for joining us today and for being part of the AKLF 14th edition in January 2023. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling very good.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling very thankful to be with you. I can't imagine anything better than that we all get together and see what happens.
See what happens, yes. For those of you who may be a little too young to, and I can see many of you here, to have even been alive in the early 1980s, let me quickly tell you what an important presence Alice Walker as a writer and an activist meant to many of us who were very much alive and kind of 1/4 of our way through our lives at that time. And already sort of aware of some of the very important and troubling issues around women's equality, women's empowerment, and race and color, and the combination of those two things and what was playing out in the world in terms of power relations and oppression and discrimination. And those were very, very kind of powerful forces at that time and in the 70s and the 80s, and people were battling on many fronts to carve out spaces for these different voices that had been excluded till then from what was seen as the white mainstream in terms of almost everything, every realm of power. So Alice Walker's writing at that time, of course, it was the color purple that sort of burst into prominence in 1982 and got the awards and grabbed everybody's attention. And how many of you have seen the film or know that the film was made? Yes, so quite a few hands going up, right? So as always happens, once a film is made, it travels across many, many spaces. So Alice, can I please ask you to share with us those beginnings? I know that you had already begun your career as a writer with much earlier works, and that The Color Purple was probably your 4th published work? If I'm
My
not
third
mistaken.
novel.
Your 3rd novel. And
third
right,
novel.
yeah. So what was it like at that time for a writer like you who was trying to do the things you were trying to do? What was the scene like at that time for literature and writing?
Well, what was going on with me was that I realized I could not write the novels that I wanted to write on the East Coast in New York City because it was, among other things, too noisy. And that I also could not remain married because the things I wanted to write would be shocking to my husband. And
Right.
so I decided to move to California and found a place way in the country to write. And I still basically live there, although right now I'm in Mexico because California, as you know, is underwater.
Mm.
But yes, I think what we learn when we are creating almost anything is that sometimes you have to change your entire life because you're creating and recreating your life. It's not just that you're creating art, but you're trying to find freer ways to live.
Right. So when you say that you realize that the things you wanted to write and the way you wanted to write were not going to be possible in New York or even in the relationship you were with, what were those things? What was it that you needed to, address or that you needed to write about?
Well, the main thing was that I needed the quiet that is really necessary for hearing the actual voices that we recreate in fiction. They come from somewhere, and you have to wait on them. You can't make them appear. So I was also very intent on writing in the idiom of my parents and my grandparents. I thought that was important. So we did not forget what they sounded like. And also that we realized that you could actually write a novel in the language that you heard as a child. Many people thought that was impossible, that it would always sound very peculiar and nobody would be able to understand it. And they would laugh at it and all of those things. But I think if you dedicate yourself with your whole heart to bringing forth something that you feel is valuable in the culture, and often it involves language, and you pray a lot that you do it right, and you listen to the ancestors, and you hope that they, are with you, I believe that you can actually fashion something useful for the culture out of what many people have already thrown away.
Right. Thank you. I love to pick up on that and will, but I want to bring Urvashi into the conversation. Urvashi is a dear friend and a woman whose work I admire. I was talking to you about her yesterday. So Urvashi Butalia, would you like to
Yes.
ask something?
Hi, Alice. May I call you that? You have
Please.
forever. Yes, thank you. You've been my hero, and I never thought I'd be sitting here and talking to you, even if virtually. So even now I'm getting goose flesh. I'm talking to Alice Walker. I'm going to tell all my feminist friends. So thank you so much. I want to pick up on the question that Anjum asked you, but bring it to something else. And I know that you will have answered this question. I know you've responded to it many, many times. But for our listeners here, for our audience here, so years ago, Alice Walker, when she began talking of black women in the feminist movement in the US and how that movement, largely white, marginalized the voices of black women and did not even listen to them, she also coined a term which was in her, sorry Alice, I'm sort of paraphrasing what you have many times said, in her thinking a term far more inclusive than the term feminism, which had come to define the women's movement in the international sphere, and this term was womanism. And in that term, Alice described it as holding a whole range of things which are pretty critical and crucial in our discussions today: love, nature, respect for our parents, our mothers' voices, and so much more. And Alice, in a country where feminism is a term that actually makes people feel a little bit, like I don't want to be there because it comes from the West, your use of the word womanism resonates much more. So I'd like to just ask you, what actually went into the thinking when you started to conceptualize something that was inclusive like this?
Well, first of all, I don't mind being called a feminist. I mean, if you want to call me a feminist, I don't really care. It's just that we have our own things. We are culturally different from the mainstream in America anyway. I mean, people of color, that is. And we have our own traditions and we have our own ways of being. And you remember, I don't know how many of the people in the audience know about Sojourner Truth, but she was a great freedom fighter and freedom and a lot of slaves, and, you know, it was just amazing. And one of the things she said when they were trying to keep her from speaking somewhere, because, you know, the women were speaking, and she was saying, well, ain't I a woman, you know?
Ain't I woman? Yeah.
Uh, and I think from that we understand that we come from a different stream of belief, activity, and to be a woman. One of the things she said was, I have lifted, you know, heavy weights. You know, I have had to, you know, struggle over, you know, muddy roads. I've had to see my children sold away. And when I prayed, you know, nobody heard me but Jesus. And ain't I a woman? So she's leaving a path for women of color that, you know, is a feminist path if you think of feminism as something that is about the liberation of women. But it's just that we have our own things. And a name for ourselves is one of the things that we have. And I think it gives us energy. I have so much more energy listening to Sojourner Truth than I do to some of her you know, white contemporaries who may have been very decent people. But Sojourner is really, she's just, you know, she's a monumental figure and very healthy for us, especially in the United States, but I think for women of color all over the planet, because we're usually the ones doing all kinds of work that you can even think of.
Right. Actually, Urvashi, again, responding to what she was asking, one of the things I remember, the most powerful books that I read at that time was In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, which is where this whole idea that just because women are denied a space of creativity in the sort of publicly accepted and commonly accepted art world, their creativity and their passion and ability to express themselves it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and it comes out in things like Our Mother's Gardens or things like the collective quilts that women make. And I remember reading, these were very powerful concepts at that time, because they may seem like simple truths, but at the time no one was really thinking like that. And,
Right.
and it was opening up a space. So there was the space of bringing in the actual black voice on the page, talking in the way that that you grew up, as you said, hearing all around you. And then there was the space of also learning to see the value in the kinds of forgotten or overlooked strengths that women had. And I think it's so relevant even for us today, because our women's lives still continue with trying to, you know, negotiate all these different responsibilities and spaces. But at this pause in the conversation, can I ask you to read a poem?
Oh, yes, okay. And I figured out, my daughter helped me figure out how to do it on
On your phone?
on my phone.
Yeah.
So this, you know, what is pressing on my heart is how many people are homeless and how many people are literally being lost in the sea as they try to go from one country to another. And how many people are really out in the elements. And so this poem is called Find Your Parents and Help Them, because I want to help us to see that even though we think we don't know these people, you know, and we can turn away, actually we can't, because they are who they are, and often they are our parents in a way. And this is the poem. Find your parents and help them. Somewhere on this green earth, your parents are still alive. Why we thought parents ever died is a mystery. Somewhere your father is still working like a beast. Your mother, her shoes a joke, still washing by calloused hand someone else's filthy clothes. You thought you had escaped them when they died, their great misery and sadness, even when they smiled at you. but you have not. They persist. They are over by the river, huddled mutely against the cold. Their shelter, a refuge, animals might refuse. You do not have to travel far to find your parents. When they died, it only meant they would go on living indefinitely. Poor, homeless, or in the slum, you are well enough to do well to do enough, thanks to them, to avoid. Perhaps it is Nahuatl that they speak now, or a dusty Urdu, but all parents speak the same language of the eyes, fear of and for who they have brought into the world. Here is your work. Find your parents now while you can. Find your parents. They have not gone anywhere. In fact, like seeds, when they died, they multiplied. Why did you ever think you could leave them behind? Look no further. Look no further for the change you can believe in. Change the world overnight. Find your parents and help them.
Wow, thank you so much. Do you want to go next?
Thank you, Alice. Beautifully read, and that is such a wonderful poem. I love it, actually. Thank you for reading it. You know, I want to ask you something in the context of this poem. As a woman and as a black woman, it seems to me from reading you, ancestry, inheritance in terms of recognizing the struggles that our forebears, our parents, grandparents, and all went through to make the space that we can occupy today. Also in terms of language, and you've talked of sojourner truth, so that kind of ancestry, all of this has been very important to you in your work, and you kind of see yourself located in a line of, I don't know how to say it, people who have made you what you are. And I wondered if you could speak a little to that, but also a slightly not very linked, but at the same time linked extension to that question is, when one looks at the feminist movement in the United States, the names that stand out, who have really sort of made some amazing changes, Sojourner Truth, you yourself, Bell Hooks, Kimberly Crenshaw, you know, could you talk about...
Gloria Steinem.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about black women, but Gloria Steinem, yes, and a whole lot of others. But, you know, the key change is that when black women have raised their voices, they have brought something really different to the discourse. How does it feel to be part of that? Do you feel yourself a part of that? So
Of
one kind of
course.
ancestry and another kind of ancestry.
Oh, absolutely. I think we have been, over the last 50 years, actually, in a mode of reclamation, of discovery, reclamation, you know, honoring Zora Neale Hurston, for instance, you know, really beginning to understand why our parents, and especially our mothers, always had gardens, why they had made quilts, why they learned how to can anything. You know, my mother could can all kinds of food, including fried chicken. I mean, that she was just a genius at that. And it gives us a sense of survival, that we can actually survive. If they could survive, you know, being enslaved and then, you know, in peonage, which was like slavery, and if they could manage to still feed their children, educate their children, you know, we have something to, you know, to follow. It's not as if we're just lost. And also, what is wonderful is that we have stopped, for the most part, following a star that is not our own. You know, it has been a terrible thing to see, you know, our people just completely bamboozled by, you know, white culture for the most part. which is not nutritious for us often. You know, it just isn't. And so to turn to our own culture and to find the nutrition that we need there, the intellectual nutrition, you know, the all kinds of, you know, good stuff for us. To find that has been, it's been a revelation, really, that we actually can survive as who we are with our own ways. Our own ways are really important,
Right,
you know, that because we shape them, we shape the way we are out of how we live and how we meet creation, you
right.
know, and creativity is so intrinsic to that, you know, the real creativity, not the imitation. We will get nowhere imitating people. You know, the imitation kills the real.
Right. Yeah. And you want to say
I
something?
do, but you go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll
No,
comment
I
later.
was just listening to what you were saying. I was just thinking that was it then part of your sort of desire or mission to also help other people understand the heritage that they had? You talked of Sojourner Truth, you talked of Zora Neale Hurston. These were maybe lost names at one time that were brought back into people's minds and consciousness. So do you see part of your work as also being to do with helping people understand the richness of where they've come from?
Oh, absolutely. And it, you know, and it keeps going because throughout I'm also trying to help people to see how we're trapped in a system that is detrimental to our growth and to our well-being. And that now is global.
Right.
So in my, I don't know if you ever, you know, go to my website, but
Yes.
now I'm really concerned, you know, about global issues that people have to wake up to really quickly because it's going so fast in a direction that is detrimental to the people of the planet. I mean, you know, those of us who are not, you know, have so much money that we don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to awaken quickly to save ourselves basically from a robotic future that is totally, you know, becoming more and more visible every day. So yes, I mean, you know, I'm in my work, of course, I wanted Black people, people of color, to be able to see themselves with the joy and with the delight that I see us. I see our culture. I mean, it has some terrible things too, of course, but we can deal with them. I mean, we can.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons art is important, because as long as you have artists, you know, you're not going to be completely in the dark. I mean, they are going to present something.
Yeah.
It's like a cultural vitamin to help you grow in a better direction.
Right. I love the way you use nutrition and vitamins and all the metaphors of health to talk about concepts like art and culture. I think it's a wonderful way of bringing those ideas in. Thank you. You had mentioned your website. So before I invite Urvashi for the next question, your blog on your website. You've sort of, is this a space or a way of communicating? Obviously, it's important enough that you keep doing it. You're very regular. How do you see your relationship to the blog, which is very different from, yeah.
I see it as myself as a tree, as an organic plant. And you notice that I do it, I mean, I don't, what do they do now? They monetize things. I have
Right.
never done that. I've had this since 2008, I think. I've never gotten 1 cent because I'm organic. You know, it's just what this being does. It creates and it just puts it out there, just as if I were something with leaves.
Right.
Uh, and I love that. I love that, and I will do that as long as I can.
Right. Thank you. Urvashi?
Alice, I want to ask you, in this battle on global issues that you have been so involved in and that you point to as one of the most urgent battles that we have to fight, saving nature, you know, looking at things like climate change, environment, do you think another global battle that is seldom recognized, but which women have been fighting for centuries, the battle against patriarchy. Do you think that that is in danger of being forgotten, or that we have to find ways, and I know that feminists are, but it's a tough battle, to link this monetized, capitalistic, masculine culture with the resurgence of different kinds of patriarchies?
Well, I think that the aim is basically to do away with women. I think it's extremely serious. I saw, if you look at my blog, you'll see that they're talking about, growing babies in hatcheries. We all have read the novel where that's happening, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, but actually it's getting closer now. And also they are basically making women feel like they don't know what they are, and therefore they're not important, and therefore we can get rid of them and just grow the babies in hatcheries. So we are really needing to awaken to how, the battle against us, and really it's a true battle, and we have to recognize it. I mean, for whatever reason, I don't know whether it's envy, whether it's fear, whatever it is, there's a real reason why, we are not seen as beings that could continue to be half of the planet. I mean, we're, seen as dispensable. So that sounds very dire, but it helps to look at it, to see why people would prefer to have a lot of babies without women, and what would that mean to the actual babies that they envision. And if you look at my blog where I have a little piece about that, you'll see that what I'm saying is that what would be missing from these hatchery babies that they are planning, they'll all be white and they'll all be male probably, would be the heartbeat. The heartbeat, I don't know about your country, but now there's something in my country where they're talking about what is a woman. And the guy's asking all these women, what is a woman? And, it's so amazing. The women he asks don't know. I mean, they really are puzzled. Like, well, do we really exist as women? And it's something that we have to really take to heart, that we are women. And what does that mean? Does it mean that we will be fine, trying to turn ourselves into men so that we're acceptable? It seems to me we've gone that way before, and where did it get us? So I don't know, I've sort of wandered off your question, but we're always as women, I think, in a world where men dominate almost everything, we have to stay alert, and we can't. I am so glad that some of the young girls who have mutilated themselves trying to be boys are now speaking up about what that feels like when they're not happy with it, years later. We are really in a place that's, I could not have imagined this place that we're in now, where so many women young women just are so sure that they don't want to be female.
Well, that's a very difficult question, actually. But do you want to talk? Of course, shall we ask Alice to read something? Because we also have to bring in I can see a lot of impatient people waiting to ask questions.
Yes. So. Alice, then we'll ask you to read something, although I have 101 other questions, and one of them that's pending is about you as a publisher, since I'm a publisher.
Why don't you
No,
talk
but that's
about
jumping, so let's have you read something.
No, jump, we're here.
Yeah. And meanwhile, all of you, keep your questions ready. We're keeping time for that.
We have
don't let us down.
So really, there's 101 questions, but your love of trees, you named your publishing house Wild Tree Press. You talk of art and words as being really important to women. You set up Wild Tree Press at the same time as we set up Kali in India. So I'm amazed by the synergy, 1984. Could you tell us a little bit about the publishing and what it meant to to you and to...
Well,
yeah.
why I founded a publishing company?
Right.
Well, first of all, I was being completely canceled and battered and beat up for the color purple. And I maintain that I have a right to my art. And so I'm not going to sit in a corner and cry because you don't like it. So I decided that I would create my own publishing company. And I didn't publish myself, but I went out and I found people who were not likely to be published, and I published them. And I did it, happily. I mean, it was wonderful. And I would have kept going, but it was just exhausting. And also, I was, starting to write, I think my longest book, The Temple of My Familiar, which I had to actually write in a different country, Mexico, which is where I am now. So, I just published people that I thought should be published. And when that ended, it ended.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know that. Let's
Shall we ask, could you read for us?
Okay.
Yeah?
and then we'll take some questions.
Then we'll take some questions, yeah.
Okay, fine. I'm afraid this is something kind of in the vein of the last poem, because I don't know about you, but I am really very much concerned about all the refugees in the world. I mean, we are looking at displacement at a level that I don't know what we're going to do. Humanity is just really having a change, that is unbelievable. Anyhow, refugees. They would not be running to us if we were not chasing them. With guns and bombs and rockets, we sold to crazy people. Out of their houses, out of their schools, out of their mosques, churches, synagogues, away from their favorite prayer trees. You are guilty, America, of arming the world. If you could, and to make money, you'd arm the universe. Remember Ronald Reagan talking about Star Wars when he could barely walk, let alone handle a laser? That's how deep it is. Our countries need to control the earth, that it never seems to care about otherwise. But it is not our country that is at fault. It is the entities who have taken it over, who might not even be from here, which is my own belief, but from some distant star. They camouflaged as heaven to make us think they were special, angels even, and not rapists of planets through the terror and manipulation of war.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. A lot to think about. Shall we turn to the audience? Who would like to ask the first question? Yes, I see a hand up here and then in the red sweater. Just give us your name first, and if you're a student or something about yourself, and then ask the question.
Hello, I'm.
Sorry. Yeah, and keep it short. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Ishika.
Your mic is not yet on. Hold it.
Hello. Yeah. Hello, I'm a student of Delhi Public School, Barashat. I'm Ishika.
What's your
Majumdar.
name?
I'm Ishika Majumdar.
Ishika, and a student of DPS Barashat.
Yes.
Okay, go.
So I
Hello.
love writing and reading lots of stories myself, but I face one common problem. As I keep writing, my ideas feel very silly, and I stop writing. How do I keep myself motivated to continue?
Well, I think if you feel that what you're writing is silly, you should stop. I don't see the need for you to continue. Is there something else that you'd rather do?
Rather than write, anything else?
No, I really love writing. one of
Yes,
my
but
goals.
you don't seem to have much respect for what you're writing. So I would think that stopping it and maybe meditating and really trying to understand a deeper level of your own soul would help your writing.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
The lady in the red. Huh, and Akkai after that.
Very good morning. I'm Raika and I'm from Modern
Mm.
High School for Girls. So my question is simple. In this battle of women to prove the cause of womenism or feminism, as some of us do use the term, um, I think my question is sort of characteristic of this scramble to prove who we are. Some of our facets, which we do consider some of our most quintessential strengths, like patience, critical thinking, non-aggression, are we sort of losing our identity in trying to prove our identity in the scramble for gaining power? Like a quintessential strength of women is critical thinking, as in unbiased and level-headed thinking without resorting to aggression, patience, and
thank you.
care.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
I'm not sure I understand your question, but you seem to be wondering whether in order to compete in a male-dominant society, you sharpen your sort of mental weapons, but what about your soul and your heart? Which we think of as often, what a woman really has, that is often quite different from most male behavior anyway. I think so. I think that, we have to honor what we have. And if, for instance, if we have tenderness, just simple tenderness, whether we're male or female, it is actually worth protecting. It is worth having. And in the world, in our culture or wherever, uh, these feelings, these emotions, these areas where we feel a great deal of caring about whatever, other people, children, animals, plants. These things are definitely worth keeping and helping to grow. Otherwise, we have a sterile planet. Which is what we're pretty much at now, because it has become so masculine, and you see this exactly in the way that so much war is consuming the planet and so much destruction. So yes, it's serious. And so I would say to you, thank you for noting this in yourself, and find a way to hang on to what is precious in your character. All the caring, all the conscience, all the love, all of that.
Thank you so much.
I think the third question was from Akkai, and after that we will have one more question. Okay, yeah, somebody at the back. Okay, yes.
Hi, Alex Walker. My name is Akkai Padmashali. I am from Bangalore. I identify myself as a transgender woman, being part of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex, and other relevant identities of this country. Knowing that the country is in such a, I think the world is in such a patriarchy, majoritarian, totalitarian, in the context of the heteronormative, cis men, cis women dominated patriarchal rooted society, we as one community are being discriminated, are being stigmatized, are being vulnerable because of your gender and sexuality, knowing that we represent the class minority, the caste minority, the sexual and gender minority identity. My question is very simple. How do you fight against these social construct norms? I travel with your journey. I travel with your journey. I travel with your story. At the same time, how do we resist against such notion of majoritarian and the concept of totalitarian? I am done.
I'm not sure I understand the question. And since I don't understand the question, I think I'll just speak to what I think of as a way for us to deal with the fact that we are all different and we have a right to be different. And it's really very simple, which is to treat, other people as you would like to be treated. It's a very old idea, but if we practiced it, the world would transform, rapidly in a positive way.
Thank you. One last question. There was, Urvashi, you said somebody at the back.
At the back had raised a hand, but they don't seem to be there.
Okay.
Oh, there's someone there, that one there.
Right.
Whatever.
Here, Jix, you can.
Okay, sorry. Too bad. Too many hands.
Hello, I'm Shoyi Monti, and I have completed my master's in literature, and I'm hoping that I'll soon start my PhD. That's my identity part. One very interesting thing that I was, thinking when you were reading out your poem about, finding parents. So, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. What I was thinking is, some of our journey of choosing feminism, of becoming a feminist, started from our home, right from our home, from being able to speak up and to fight the people that we have known as our parents, to go and say this is not right, this is not what is going to happen in my home, or this is not what is going to happen with my mother. So what I was thinking is, you said of finding parents. So if we are given this choice of having a parent who is not our birth parent per se, who is given to us, so is that a way of also getting more power into this entire journey of women? So like, can finding parents also be a way of getting more power and taking this entire journey of women further? That's my question.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Because when you see how many women, and men, but mostly women, I live in California most of the time, and as you may know, a lot of California is now pretty much underwater. I mean, there are these storms and so much rain, rivers in the sky, and you may also be aware, I don't know how much you know about California, but there is so much homelessness. People are in tents, everywhere you look, on the bridges, along the side of the highway. So much incredible suffering and homelessness. And I've been thinking, as all of this water just is running all over everywhere, where are these people? Where are they? Where do they find shelter?
Yeah.
When the streets are flooded? So really, to strengthen us as women and as human beings, of course, find your parents and help them. These are your parents. These are, they're not biological parents, but that doesn't mean that they're not still, in some deeply essential way, your parents. These are people who need our help. And we need to not distance ourselves. That is why the poem says, find your parents. It's not saying find some stranger on the street. It means being able to see in the suffering of other people your own ancestors and your own kin, and yourself, and helping,
Thank you. Yes, and should we just take, we've got time. There's all this while it's been the women and the girls who have asked questions. I'd like to allow that young gentleman who's been patiently raising his arm for a while to ask one question, and then we'll hand over to Urvashi again. Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. I am Anirban Bose, currently doing my master's in English language and literature from Adams University. So my question is that we have heard about your blogs. We have known about the places of third place, first place, and second place, the physical space and the virtual space. So how do you think that being a black woman, the consciousness, the identity of yourself is being performed in this space? This is the first question, and the layered question is that how do you define this space from your perspective? Is it a physical space for you that you are fighting for?
Okay, thank you.
You know, thank you. But I have to say, I can't understand your accent. I'm sorry. So I didn't really get it. So would you tell me what he
Yes,
asked?
yeah, just you want to go ahead? I think he was talking about, he said he started off with the fact that he's familiar with your blogs and with the concept of a first space and a second space, which is a physical and a virtual space. And as a black woman, he was wanting to know how you claim these spaces and also whether for you it's a physical space that you're fighting for. It's quite a complicated question. I think I got it right because he's nodding. So yeah, okay.
I still don't get it. I mean, I have the blog because, you know, I'm a citizen of the planet. And it's my responsibility as a writer who gained the ability to write through so many generations of people's struggles. So it is my duty to continue to spread whatever information and thought that, you know, I feel ancestors really wanted me to be able to offer in the attempt to make us as a world, you know, frankly, happier. I mean, I see all of my work really as an attempt to help people see that we can be a lot happier on this planet than we are. There's no reason why we should be in such misery so much of the time. I mean, it's really insane.
Yeah. Thank you. I think Urvashi wanted to share something with you, which I also felt you might enjoy, and that could be a little thing you take away from this conversation. So you want to...
Alice, just a bit of information that might be of interest to you. So, you know, the color purple is now 40 years old, and what you tried to do in that book, with which we began this discussion, which was to claim the language of the ancestors, to write about the lives of women, to critique patriarchy within the community, but also to write about the tangled relationship of love and patriarchy. So, and you came under a lot of criticism for critiquing or looking at black patriarchy. I just want to tell you about a writer we have in India called Bama, who wrote a similar book 30 years ago. So it's the 30th anniversary of a novel of hers. The name is quite complicated, which Anjum and I will send you later. And she is from the Dalit caste, which is really at the bottom of the caste ladder. And Bama did exactly what you did in The Color Purple, which is to critique Dalit patriarchy and yet talk about the role of women and claim a larger feminist movement for her own. And she faced that kind of criticism that you had also faced, but also a huge amount of solidarity. And she's today a really important voice in the world of literature in India. So I just thought you might be interested in hearing about her and connections across the world.
Yeah, we started by calling this linking worlds. And the idea that all of us are connected in so many ways, as you know, it's so important for you to explain through your writing. Before we end the session, Alice, would you like to end with something for us to say to all the people who are gathered here and who are listening online? Is there something you'd like to wish us for the year ahead, or leave a thought you'd like to leave us with?
Yes, I would like to leave you with the thought that what connects us, and many of you know this quite well, in The Color Purple, what I was really doing, and which, you know, very few people noticed really, was I was critiquing the idea that the God that most people thought of as God was really not the God that actually kept us going. Because that God is an idea, and it comes from, you know, a different culture, and, you know, maybe it worked for whoever created it, but what really worked for us was nature. I mean, we were fed and clothed and housed by nature. And so I was very, you know, interested in helping people affirm their right to respond, for instance, to the sun, you know, to rain, to grass, to what is here on this earth, that keeps us, you know, and if we could do that, we could take better care of it. Because when I was growing up, I felt that, you know, my people were so harassed and so sad, and they were forced basically to adopt, you know, a God that it wasn't the God they brought from Africa for sure. And so I like to constantly reaffirm for all of us, you know, the primacy of nature as the, you know, the sun, you know, the moon, the stars, all of that, as being what really, really sustains us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. May we have a round of applause and a big thank you to Alice Walker. Thank you so much.